Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Big John here and the mighty Paul Rimmer. Unfortunately, Pat's busy, so he won't be with us. And our guest hasn't made it to the StreamYard yet, even though I have been communicating with her. But we'll skip that and we'll get on. But anyway, first of all, this is a National Housing Party. And there are our emails to get in contact with me in the northwest or Pat down south, and our admin email. And there's our PayPal as well for any kind of donations that you've got. Good evening, Craig. I hopefully you would have been part of the topic tonight, but Kate's not turned up yet. I did want to speak to her before because I don't want to. During the video, I don't want to go into the big C until the end section of the video because I plan to cut it and stuff like that. But that was the plan. Good evening, Mark. Hope you're all right, mate. But yeah, we wanted to talk about the NHS and some of my first videos when I got my YouTube up and running. 2017, I interviewed NHS workers who were protesting at the Conservative conference in Manchester. Now, why did I interview these NHS people? Because we've got two family friends who have been nurses for like 30 years. And they tell me all horror stories. Obviously, our NHS is like crumbling away. It's never going to be getting better or anything like that. All we do is just pump money into it, but it doesn't earn anything. It's just a boat that's sinking and we're just pouring the water out of it all the time. That's all it is. And there's so many medical negligences that have happened through the NHS. And one of my voters, I want to give a big shout out to Ramo, one of my top voters in Hollingwood. I mean, I knocked on Ramo's door when we was canvassing, me and Pat. And we'd already talked on Facebook. She's seen some of my things. And I've been supporting her with issues with the council. But, I mean, I'll cut the story short. A dad died under like social care. It's a complicated story, but a dad died under social care. And it wasn't Ramo's fault. It certainly was the social care people who why he died. And I mean, what I will say as well about Ramo is that through going seeing, she's got issues herself, but through seeing doctors and things like that, they've even on her record, on her medical record, it says that she's got mental health issues, but she's never had a mental health assessment, never. But she's got mental health issues because these people are writing down what they think to write down. Right, I guess see you now. I guess see you.
Northern accent.
A proper northern accent, Kate. Welcome to the show.
Right there.
Better late than never.
Yeah, I must apologise, actually. I was I hardwire everything, and there's only some things that I put on my laptop. It's only because, you know, there's lovely what kind of agents of the state already raided my house once and took all my stuff.
The police.
They're horrible, aren't they? I just want to give a big shout out to Craig, who's in the chat, and I think Craig's been on your show, has he not?
I don't know. On my show or on your show?
Yeah, your show is a Scouser.
Maybe.
Yeah, the Liverpool, what was it, the care thing?
Oh, right. The Liverpool murder pathway.
Yeah.
Interesting because Hillary Clinton actually copied it and took it to America. That's exactly what she did. That's how successful it was.
Oh, wait, he's saying it's not Kate's show, but it was on UNN. I'm sure it was on
possibly on Jackie Devoy.
That might be the one.
Yeah, because I do Sons of Liberty, I started off in radio. People think I came from nowhere. Actually, the 21 minutes that I did that had like 2 million views in 2 days was in February 2020 when I was working on local radio as a health expert, and I covered the first rumblings of COVID, and I went on to the Chinese public health website, and it was that they aired, and I would typically get about 5,000 views live streaming it to Facebook. And I went to the cinema that evening and it had 50,000 views, and I thought, oh gosh, I'm in trouble. And then the next day it was 250,000 views, and then it was 2 million views worldwide within a few days. And that's what put me in all the newspapers and started. My sister called me from Australia actually and said, oh my gosh, wait, bitch, you're on the telly. And I was like, and it was on Channel 9, and then I was on the TV in Kenya. And so that was kind of
global
really early on. So when all these people go, oh, she's a shill, I was like, oh, shut up. Stupid.
Everybody's a shill. Can I just say I don't really want to talk about Big C until the end of the video, because
what's Big C?
Big C.
Big CO.
Big
COVID.
CO.
COVID.
I know what you're talking about. It doesn't exist.
Right, but we'll talk a bit
like
more.
Deirdre. I've just
the
put
end
these
about
on
that,
with
but
so
not-
much money, and they're like Deirdre of Coronation Street.
The first thing I want to say to you, Kate, is tell me what you think about the Lucy Letby case.
Well, it's not about what I tend not to go on what I think with anything, because that's just being emotive. These people say, "Oh, I got a gut." Yeah, okay, you could say, "Yes, I have a gut feeling about things," but I tend to look at the actual evidence and what would be a motive there. And so, if one goes back to, I believe it was 2020, there was a case where there was a substantial payout of, I believe, 50 million to a baby that was damaged during delivery. So that was paid out as paid out from the trust. So if you look at the amount of babies that died in that unit over a period of time, I suppose if they were to be shown to be negligence, that would be an enormous payout, whereas homicide, it would be a minuscule payout in comparison. So if you look at her, who she is, and then you look at the evidence. So first of all, I interviewed Dr. Richard Gill, who's a statistician. And he was very much pivotal in getting an almost identical case of a midwife who, her name will come back to me in a minute, Lucia de Burke. She was convicted. I think she spent 9 years incarcerated, but it was 11 in total. And he was pivotal in having her conviction quashed. And another nurse as well, another midwife. And it was almost an identical case. So let's look at the case for a minute. That particular unit had doctors on it who were inexperienced. It only had one consultant. There had been an investigation prior to this investigation that led to the conviction of Lucy Letby. And that investigation had showed that she was completely without fault. And what they'd found in the unit was that it needed another consultant, that you had junior doctors, senior house officers, who were performing procedures on babies, which ordinarily would be, you would only perform it once or twice. And they were having like 8 or 9 attempts at, getting an umbilical catheter into that child. There were so many anomalies that could easily be explained. And the jury were ordered not to read the science, ordered not to read it. Now, during all of this time, you then had the expert witness, a former paediatrician, who was no longer on the GMC register. So he's not allowed to give evidence. And he went along and he hadn't actually worked in that arena for very long. And so that was another anomaly. Those doctors who were involved in that went on to have very senior positions. They then went to the police themselves. And it was very sad that she just happened to be working on those shifts. Now, she raised the alarm as well, where she went and found a baby that all the monitors had been left off it, where the consultant and this other doctor had been in there, and they admitted that. They admitted this in the press. So there was that. I'm just taking a few of these things. Now, then one talks about, oh, well, I mean, when I hear the public, forgive me, but whoever then puts the public as a jury, you can get anybody, can't you? But so then you had them saying, well, she admitted to it in the ramblings of a note. Now, nurses, they have to re-register every year. I think it's I don't even know what it is now. It's about 120, 140 pounds, ridiculous. And they have to tick boxes that they have fulfilled the criteria to re-register. And that would be so many hours of study over the 3 years and so many hours that they would have to do in clinical practice in order to fulfill the requirements to re-register. So they're ticking the boxes, as do the doctors on the GMC. And every 3 years, they have to do revalidation, where somebody goes through. And what nurses are encouraged to do is to do a reflective cycle. So what they have to do is they have to take an incident, and using, for instance, Gibbs' reflective cycle, which is one that many nurses will use. And basically, it's a cycle where, what was the incident? What happened? And then you have to say, what did you do? What went well? What didn't go so well? What could you do in the future that would help this? And what have you learned from this? So you're reflecting on your practice in the attempt to make you better in the National Homicide Service. But anyway, in the attempt to make you better. So it would not be abnormal. Actually, a lot of psychologists, a lot of psychiatrists who do counselling with patients, one of the things they will actively encourage people to do is to write letters to them, to somebody, but not to mail it. You do it almost like a healing thing. And, you know, if you remember back to your school days, which don't look like they were very far back, and you would sit in the days when we didn't have laptops, and we would have our books, and it was very normal for you to write, you know, my real name's Kay Allison, but, you know, Kay loves Graham 4K, and you'd doodle on your books, wouldn't you? And you might write, hate so-and-so, I hate so-and-so, so-and-so's, you know, a rat bag or whatever. And you might end up doodling all over. So what you actually had there was a piece of paper where it wasn't one entry, it was quite a few entries on that same piece of paper. And I think if one was to look at that, you know, I killed them. Imagine, for instance, that you've been looking after somebody, you've been nursing somebody. I've done it. I remember being in the emergency room. It was a winter. It was 5 p.m., biggest emergency room in Europe, the Queen's Medical Centre. It was about 5 p.m. and a road traffic incident came in. And, you know, on a dark winter's evening by 5 o'clock, and it was wet and it was cold. And two cars had a direct collision, and the driver's side of each in opposite directions. And one of the drivers was very injured. The other driver, but she wasn't in her regular car. She had 3 children in the car with her, 2 children that were young children from a first marriage. One had a head injury that was minor, and a baby. And the baby was in front. The baby was all right, but she had terrible injuries. And she was very cold when she arrived. She was in shock. She'd bled a lot. She had very traumatic injuries to the limbs, to the upper chest, and everything goes very quiet because you have then, I don't know if it's changed now, but your trauma team, nurse A, nurse B, nurse C, the team in those days had gone out, a trauma team had gone out, and they came back in, the red phone ring, you know, ETA, when she's expected to arrive. So the consultant was in, you have your porters on hand who run for the blood. So there's a lot of people around while they're trying to save this woman. And I remember she was very slim. And one of the porters then happened to say, oh, that's so-and-so. And it was a member of staff was a member of staff at the hospital. No one recognised her because she was in a trauma situation. Now, she'd got 3 young children. She was married to a senior member of those that you would find working within a hospital without giving away too much information. And she subsequently died. She died not there, but she, once you get that golden hour, that patient might then go on to theatre, they go on to definitive care, they might go on to intensive care, but because the organs haven't been perfused with oxygen, those organs might eventually start to fail. And I heard later that she died. And, I thought about that for a long time, that they'd lost their mother. And that was one person. And I only worked in adult A&E, but we shared the resus room with pediatrics. So, you start to think about, could we have done something else? My very first job, I worked in a gynecology ward. We did suction terminations up to 12 weeks, 5 to 15 a day. It's murder most horrid. And babies ripped to pieces. Now, later, once I had children, and I saw later abortions as well in another job I did, which is just horrific. Some of these babies are born alive and they're left to die. And now you cannot save them. Midwives are ordered they can't save them. If these babies continue to live and they don't die, you can't do anything to actively save them. Well,
can I just get in something? Benjamin Savage, we're not trying to get Lucy Letby off. The evidence is absolutely shaky on both sides. If she's guilty, right, why was all the things missed? Why was all these people who's supposed to have said missed? The guilt should be on Lucy and people who work at that hospital, as far as I'm concerned. That's what
you have there is if you have evidence that is being not allowed in, if you have my point that I was getting to there is it wouldn't be, would I write down, I assisted in terminations. Now I'm dead against it, and I had a really hard time when I became a Christian, and I wept. I said, oh my gosh, I've been complicit in murdering children. Now, I might have wrote that on a piece of paper when I was thinking about it all and getting my head around it. I mean, I didn't. But can you see how the ramblings of, and she was under an awful lot of pressure. So does that convict somebody? But that Dr. Gill, during the trial, who was nothing to do with the trial, he was living in Holland. The police came to his house in the middle of the night and demanded that he take his blog down or he would be arrested for contempt of court. Why? When he was posting the statistical probability of what they were saying, the whole thing about the insulin, all of it. And to remember, all of her colleagues did not believe and don't believe that she did it at all. They stood by her. And even the sister, to date, has said they stand by her. They knew her. Now, let's go back a little bit here. Maybe you should all cast your minds back to Harold Shipman. Are you so convinced that one man was able to get away with all of that for so long? You might want to start questioning Beverly Allett's case as well, because I actually brought this up to Dr. Gill, and he went through that with me. Now I just think, oh my word, the fact that Lucy doesn't, they were trying to stop her having, so that she couldn't appeal. Now, they're now keeping her up for another murder because that stops her from being able to, they'll never let her out if they get away with it. They don't want her to come out, because what would that do? Well, who actually is responsible? That unit was leaking blood products from a theatre and raw sewage into the roof access above those cots, those baby cots. Also in that unit, they only looked at the nurses and the doctors were on duty. What about the cleaners, the phlebotomists? What about the pharmacists that would be up there regularly, the catering staff, the visitors? There were many, many people that accessed that unit that were never even looked at. There would be catering staff every day. Electricians were up there. Plumbers were up there because of this problem. There was an identical case like this in Australia, where they started to look at the people, and it turned out to be just that.
The Netherlands, Lucia in the Netherlands.
Lucia de Burke. Lucia de Burke. So the other thing is as well, one has to remember that these babies were very premature. They do die. They do die of bleeds. They were very, very prem babies. There were also too many of them. There were not enough staff that were skilled enough. This had already been identified. So it was already high risk. So you had a ward that was taking these babies. Well, of course, the deaths would go down because they stopped taking the babies for that period of time. So what they did was, as far as I'm concerned, they needed to cover up something. So that whole thing was manufactured, and she was the useful patsy. And that's why when you looked at her now, why was that doctor allowed anonymity? And they said about her breaking down on the stand. There was clearly something going on. You don't go for weekends away with a doctor if you're just mates. He doesn't lend his car. Now, he was married. Why does he have anonymity? She probably broke down because it was the ultimate betrayal. Somebody that she deeply cared about. I mean, it's the baying mob. God help us. If whoever is watching this, and are you trying to say they're innocent? God help us if it's just a baying mob that don't critically think.
Now, can I just intervene here? I want to say, because this is on the NHS. Obviously, we're focusing on this one case, which I'm not that familiar with, but I've been listening to what you said. You talked about the National Homicide Service. That is a real indictment of the NHS. And then you talked about cover-ups. Was it a cover-up? Now, there seems to be a lot of incompetence, bordering on negligence, bordering on willful malpractice in the NHS. This is what a lot of patients are coming back, and families are saying, because obviously you took the National Homicide Service, there's something wrong. There's something fundamentally wrong. I mean, for so long, the NHS was put on a pedestal. It was almost worshipped as an idol.
I don't believe they were on a pedestal.
But now we've reached a point where people have become extremely critical of the NHS. We're not happy with it. We're not happy with its structure. You see, because it's got a monopoly situation and it's financed by the government, the producers have the power. The NHS staff have the power. The NHS administration has the power, not the patients. The patients are very passive in all this. There's very little accountability. The one way we do achieve accountability is through the courts, but that's in extreme circumstances. We're seeing incident after incident where families are concerned, and we're seeing people going in for routine checkups, routine operations, and suffering horrendous injuries. Now, the NHS is now being described as the IHS. It's the International Health Service. Not only is it open to the whole world to come here and use it, but it's staffed by the whole world. Now, as an Englishman, I remember the NHS.
Some breaking news for you in a minute that I haven't even posted on my Twitter. I've saved it for you.
Okay. As an Englishman in England, I mean, I remember when the NHS was largely British with a few foreign nurses and so on. Most of the doctors when I was young, I mean, I'm 62, so we're talking about the 1960s. Most of the doctors were English doctors, and you could actually relate to them at a human level, and you could communicate with them, and you got the feeling that they were actually involved with the issues that you had, and you were going to get decent service. That's almost guaranteed that their heart was in it, you know. But
it was a vocation. It was a vocation because you had cottage hospitals. So your doctors and your nurses lived in those communities. Their children went to school with your children. And, you know, Bob the plumber or Eric the carpenter, it was in your best interest as a community to get them healthy and back to work. You know, the local teachers.
Once you go to an international health service, You've got people from all over the world coming here. The qualifications might be dodgy. Their commitment to the patients is very dodgy, and their treatment is very dodgy. And so, but we have no comeback against this. We have no way to say, well, I'm not happy with this treatment. You either accept it or you walk away.
I think it's you've identified something, and quite rightly. Unfortunately, and when with total respect, because what you've just highlighted is what many of the general public are saying, but to actually to lift off the veneer and to talk about actually what the NHS is, because it's not there anymore. So the NHS, when it was founded, it was supposed to be free healthcare for all at the point of source, and it's a cult. It's an absolute cult. If you look at the NHS itself, performing-wise, it ranks in the lowest third in the world for treatments available, waiting times, treatment outcomes, and it's on a par with a poor Eastern Bloc country. During the pandemic, they used very old, used tactics. They built them up. Meaden, the way they do it, they built them up to be heroes and gave them incentives. You could also advertise your business on the NHS website as long as you gave a discount, which is racketeering. And they gave the staff all these discounts, priority shopping, and appealed to their egos. But so they made the mistake, and I think as well, and I don't care, I couldn't give a rat's ass, any nurses that are listening to me. I don't care. I can do your job. Can you do mine? I don't care what you think anymore. The fact that you danced on TikTok videos with empty units, which is outrageous. We would have been sacked for that. We would have been disciplined. Wearing hospital clothing, taking food vouchers is shocking. And the fact that most of them were fat and out of shape, when it actually states on their code of conduct that they should be, they're health ambassadors. They're supposed to take care. Shocking, disgusting. And I'd have sacked you all. And for all of you that are on strike as well, I'd have sacked your asses as well straight away, because it's a vocation. I don't agree with it. But look, let's just talk about what they're doing. So they are employing nurses from overseas that come with their dependents. And it might be that they've got, they get a visa for themselves, but they might have 7 children. And they can bring, and parents, they can bring all their dependents with them. A lot of them are then pregnant when they arrive. So you've got all the overseas nurses coming from Africa, from Vietnam, from the Philippines, and from India, a huge portion from India. They're given great incentives where they're paid their accommodation. Everything is paid for them. Great incentives. They go to great lengths. They go out there and advertise it. Our nurses here, our doctors, they are being trained here, but they're not taking the jobs. They're going overseas as soon as they've been trained. Now, there's supposed to be 350 new medical school places coming, and it comes after Pulse exclusively revealed that a record number of doctors applied for initial allocation GP specialty training places this year, but the vast majority face rejection. So the government's replacing them with physician associates. They're not even doctors. They're doing a 2-year training course. So you're going to have people that they've already got loads of cases against them for ordering in investigation scans when they shouldn't be, because they're iatrogenic, they're disease causing, they're ordering too many. So what you've got is the GPs and junior doctors have expressed concern that the government's target to increase GP training places in England to 6,000 by 2031 is not at the pace needed, and prospective GPs are being turned away. So isn't that interesting? 2031. If you look at the Palliative Care Funding Review, which everyone can look at, it's in the public domain, page 64, scroll down, Palliative Care Funding Review 2011, the Lansley report, scroll down to page 64, and right at the bottom of that, you'll see this box. And in the box, if one of you wants to text me on Twitter, I will send you that page now, so you can pop it on the screen if you like. because I don't know how to do it on. I've not got my laptop and my phone connected up. But that page actually goes and it gives a demographic of 8. It says that they are going to be broadening, putting more people and incentivizing money, end-of-life care, palliative care. So they're going to be putting more people on end-of-life care and they're going to be giving more money to it. So when you get to and it goes from 2011 all the way across to 2031. So what you have is 18-year-olds, and you can see that 18-year-olds, more of them are going to be living. Their life rate goes up. Up to 24-year-olds, it's starting to level off. Then you get them older and it starts to go down. So by 2031, less of them are going to be alive. When you get to 65 plus, more and more of them are going to be dying and placed on end-of-life care. Now, one could say, well, how is that possible if they're going into the nursing homes and putting it out in the community and they're doing flu shot, COVID shot, shingles shot, pneumonia shot? Surely if they were doing all these shots, these people's life expectancy would be going up and the amount of them being placed on end-of-life care would be going down.
Can I just interrupt, Kate? Because I've got something related to that. And you can send me on Twitter the link to that.
Doing it now.
So,
I'm doing it now.
My mum's got advanced Alzheimer's, and about 2 years ago, she went in hospital. And when I came the next day, they said she was going on palliative care. And I said, why? Because she's not eating or drinking. I said, you what? Get lost. I took the pack home with me, but she's still here 2 years later, eating and drinking. They just didn't have the right person. I know what it's like in accident emergency. They don't have time to sit with my mum all the time and they've got to run about. I came and it weren't for 15 minutes that a nurse even came to check on my mum. And there was
actually, it's got nothing to do with that they don't have the time. They are supposed to have the time. And if they feel overworked, then they have to take it first to their line manager. Because as a nurse, you are accountable for both your acts and omissions if you're a registered nurse. So if you are not doing what you are supposed to do, which should be that they were checking on her and giving her a drink and everything else, and anything happens to her in a court of law, you've got to justify why you didn't or why you did. Whatever you did or you didn't do, you've got to justify it. And you are accountable on your own. The NHS will not be behind you. Your union will not be behind you. The the NMC will not be behind you, and you will stand alone. And so this is where nurses during the COVID thing, they believed that they were above the law.
This is the point that I wanted to make earlier, because you talked about the NHS being free at the point of use. That was an illusion.
Or however you pronounce his name.
Yeah, that was the claim that was made, and it's one of the claims that is often made to justify the NHS and the way it's structured.
It's a lie, isn't it?
Way you control that, see, because needs are infinite, and so the NHS can't cope with it doesn't want to cope with the amount of needs that are out there. So the way it copes is to ration its resources and make people wait. I
would have to agree with Paul on that. You're correct in making them wait, but it's not to do with the resources. And I'm not disagreeing to be argumentative. I'm just saying that's you're on the right track, but that's actually not what's going on. So what they've actually done is they don't care that they are exhausting any money that's there. What they're doing now is there's now a place called Acacium, Acacium, Acacium. And what Acacium is it's interesting because acacia is a poisonous plant. It means cyanide. So it's interesting that they would get a nursing agency and call it Acacium. So this is a nursing agency that's worldwide. They recruit from all over the world and they are supplying nurses to the NHS. Now, those nurses are being paid £100 an hour and the agency gets £800 an hour. So they're charging the NHS £1,800 an hour for these nurses. Now, if those nurses are doing a 12-hour shift and they can come from anywhere in the world. What does that mean? Well, it's going to bankrupt the NHS, but do you see what an absolutely wonderful idea this is? Because all of your Rishi Sunaks and co, and he actually was in talks with them. He knows who they are. They're all going to be investing in it. They don't care that it's going to kill the people or whatever it's going to do. And so you have the guideline now as well, 29.5, where anyone who is aged 18 or over, if they have breathing problems and they don't improve with minimal intervention, they can be placed on end of life care. You have them debating the what is it called? Planned, well, I forget what it's called now. It's gone out of my head. It'll come in a minute. But at the moment, we have the 2000 Prevention of Euthanasia Bill by Anne Winterton. Well, they want to now bring in assisted dying, and we see, Esther Ranson asking for assisted dying. Incidentally, just to say to your listeners, there was Esther Ranson saying, if you haven't had a vaccine and you have a heart attack, you shouldn't be given any care. Well, Esther, you took your vaccine and then you got cancer. So with all the reports that are coming out now, should we all turn around and say you don't deserve care because you took a drug which is now attributed to turbo cancers? No, of course we wouldn't say that, because we all have respect for the sanctity of life. But you've got a case here, and what they're doing...
Some of us have respect for the sanctity of life. I mean, Esther Ranson is Jewish, isn't she? She believes in euthanasia. That's anti-Christian, It's anti-Christian to kill people. It is. I don't know.
Rishi Sunak had meetings in January to March of 2023 with Acacium. He had meetings, and those meetings are about taking on the nurses. Now, if you look at the private equity insights into that, and a Canadian firm Onyx own the firm that supplies agency nurses to the NHS at £2,000 per 12-hour shift. So that equates to 730 times 2,000 per post over a full 365-day year of work. You work that out, how much money that is. So that works out a potential cost to the NHS of using agency nurses is 1.46 million per nursing post. And this is what is going on. So they don't care that it's going to further exhaust it when it's got the pensions. This is a massive investment opportunity for people like the tyrants in power who got rich with the PPE gear and everything else. They're investing in this Acacia. This is what's going on. And
the NHS is just like a sponge which absorbs money. We know it's spending hundreds of millions a year on diversity and equality issues.
Of our money.
Yeah.
Sorry?
Listen, they're just draining our money away. Honestly, it sickens me. Anyway, hold on. Just let me plug.
There's no competition. They'll get away with it.
Let me plug a minute. Thank you to the chat, everyone in the chat. Good evening, Mark Williams, Gerald. I haven't seen Ramo on yet, but good evening, Ramo. We're talking stuff here, guys. But I just want to interrupt. So, Dr. Shola Amu, whatever her name is, came out saying a lot of stuff about white privilege. Earlier on, I just had Dr. Death up, an African guy who lied about his age. He'd failed in other hospitals. Oldham Hospital took him on, and he killed a 48-year-old Indian woman. Dr. Death, he was called in Oldham. She blocked me.
Just the one doctor, was it? Because, if you look on clause 17 of the Prevention of Euthanasia Bill, you'll see in there that doctors actually are protected. They can't be found guilty of it. Otherwise, no doctor would go out and do their practice. This is nothing new. You know why people are so surprised? I began my training in 1984. This is nothing new. This has always happened. King George, the Queen's grandfather. So in that room, there was a nurse. Was him. Was the nurse and the doctor and his son, Edward. And his last words that we heard that were registered were he said, "Damn you." And he was given a mixture of cocaine and morphine into his jugular. And he asked the nurse to do it, and the nurse wouldn't. And he did it himself. Now, when he died, it was in his memoirs, this doctor. And all his colleagues said, oh, yeah, he was always killing people. Now, nurses and doctors, I spoke to a nurse recently, well, last year, and she was going on a training course. And she was a palliative care nurse. And these nurses, she was asking, we don't want them dying in pain. Half these patients are not in any pain. I was speaking to a professional footballer, and the two nurses came in and said, are you in any pain? He went, no, love, I'm perfectly all right. So they put a flush in, and then 2 more syringes, and he slumped to the side within a few minutes. He just slumped. And then the doctor came and got this young man who was a professional footballer and said, could you come outside? And said, you are aware your father's dying. 20 minutes later, his dad was dead. His dad had been sitting up chatting to him. I spoke to a student nurse, and she told me how the patients were left in feces and urine, and she was forbidden to give them a drink no matter how much they cried, and all those patients died. I spoke to care assistants. This is nothing new. It's just that this is being the masks off. This has always happened. It's a very fine line. When you give morphine, it depresses the respiratory center of the brain. If someone is in pain, how much do you give them before the morphine's going to actually slow their breathing right down? It's a delicate balance, but you cannot hasten a death because that would be murder in a court of law, pre-planned murder. But the majority of these patients aren't in pain. A lot of elderly starve to death. They dehydrate to death. They're giving not enough to drink. So then you get lots and lots of problems with confusion. You get lots of physical problems. Patients should be having at least 1.5 litres plus cups of tea and coffee and their fruits and vegetables. And they don't get that. And this is ignorance. And one cannot ever say, well, they're busy. No, that's not. You're there to do everything for that patient that they would do themselves if they had the necessary strength or will to do so. And
what we're basically highlighting here is that the NHS has lost its way. It's lost its spirit.
I think it lost its way a long, long time ago. Certainly in my career, it's always been.
How do we rectify it? This is the issue now.
You're talking about polishing a turd. How
the problem is the NHS because it's a bureaucracy. It passes on its responsibilities onto everybody else, and ultimately the taxpayer is always going to pick up the bill.
Well, who owns it? Who runs it?
Sorry?
It's the government. Who is in charge of the NHS?
It doesn't run it, but it's run through the bureaucracy and it's run through the civil service and then the management, the administration of the hospitals. I mean, remember in the Thatcher Major era, they were going for autonomous hospitals who basically ran their own institution and and became responsible for their own funding and so on.
That's why you have trust. It's kind of happening.
So guys, listen. This is my mum's palliative care stuff, and they made that decision in the morning. I came within 10 minutes. My mum was eating and drinking, and she's still here now. She don't have any kind of jab. We've refused everything. And when we're in the hospital, one of the last times she was in, I was in for 8 hours to give her a test in the morning, a C test. And then they come back later on doing another test saying, hang on a minute, how come you giving her we have to give her 3 tests to make sure she's not positive. I stood up, I'm going home, get me in a taxi, I'm taking my mum home, you got to fuck off. And then I took my mum home. She's still here. Advanced Alzheimer's, you get up to 10 years. She's coming on 15 years now. And a medication, a blister pack, has gone from 8 tablets 4 times today to just 3 tablets.
You should give your mother a tablespoon of coconut oil, cold pressed, organic. It's about £5 at the supermarket. A tablespoon at breakfast, mix it with a porridge, a tablespoon at lunch, and a tablespoon at dinner. Just as it comes on the spoon, mix it into food. And that's going to because 70% of your brain cells are made by the fats that you eat. The membrane, 70% of the membrane, 50% of the membrane of the rest of your cells is made from the fats that you eat. She needs fat. She needs something to carry that energy. If you give her coconut oil, that would be the best thing to give her.
We do.
So what's the solution going forward? What's your vision of a new NHS, a better NHS?
Well, I think the first thing is it's when you get into the stage that the majority of the NHS is degenerative care. It's degenerative care. Having a baby is not a medical condition, so you can discount the big, massive obstetrics for a start. Yes, accident and emergency is good and it does good work. But if you look at what actually needs to be done, you don't want a great big sprawling hospital in a big city, and you can't fix what is inherently dirty in a money-making machine because they won't allow you to. So what you have to do is you have to totally turn your back on it, and you have to set up within your community. And there has to be nurses on the ground that live among the community, and they know the families, they know what they do. And it's no good waiting. When you're driving your car down the road, do you just drive it all the time and not bother checking your oil? You just leave it. You don't even look at the oil gauge. You wait till your engine blows up and you go, oh gosh, engine's blown up now. I know I need some oil. No, you don't. When you have your car checked regularly, you put oil in it. You check the air in your tyres. You clean the filters. You don't wait till your car's knackered and then try and fix it. Well, this vehicle that we have now is the most amazing vehicle that will carry you through life. So if you're going out there and you're eating loads of garbage food and you're not going to bed early, you're sleeping late, you're drinking lots of alcohol, you're engaging in unprotected sex with lots of different people, oral sex, anal sex, which is really toxic, both of those things. That's why the vagina is nice and acidic. If you're engaging in taking lots of illicit drugs, if you are flooding your home with EMFs, with booster boxes and Lord knows what else, I'm hardwiring here. If you're doing all of these things and you're filling your entire environment with pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, every kind of toxin you could possibly think of with all your personal care products, if you are drinking fluoride, chlorine, bromine in all your fire retardants, you can eventually realize that your life is going to be truncated. And you might very well have a need for visiting a doctor because your body is going to give you a symptom. So I think instead of waiting for that, what you do is you do it right from when these children are children. So the most important year of a baby's life is the year before it's born. So you teach the women about good nutrition. So when they have the babies, they already know. You teach them about breastfeeding, how to keep everything clean around that child. And then you keep those children healthy. You don't shove viruses, funguses, mold, aluminium, mercury, all kinds of RNA from every other species into them. You give them all clean foods. You love and you nurture them. You teach them how to, it tells us in scripture, I give you the seeds and the fruits of the trees and what's in them, vitamin B17, and the herbs shall be your medicine. So you give them good, clean, nutrient-dense food. People will not get sick. I have a book, I have lots of books, but I have a book on here by a leading immunologist. And I think that's the one, actually. I think it was Dr. Fudenberg, H.H. Fudenberg, it was, Basic Clinical Immunology. And he did a study where he showed that a 10-year study where patients that had the flu shot in that 10 years, 5 times, were 96% likely to get Alzheimer's. In only 5. Anyway, I think that was one of the last papers he was allowed to publish. It wrecked his career. Before that, he'd been a leading one. Another book I've got here, which is really interesting as well, called Our Stolen Future. And this looks at all of the chemicals that are coming into the environment. You have babies being born, and whereas like when you and I were born, and as we grew up, I knew I was a girl. I remember country dancing when I was 8 and liking Simon Smith and feeling all butterfly when I had to hold his hand for country dancing. My first little bit of attraction. Children are being born now and they don't know what they are. They don't have those feelings. Why? Because our environment is completely contaminated. You've got babies being injected with immortalized cell lines from boys, MRC5 in the measles vaccine, and WI38 MRC5s from a male aborted fetus, WI38 from a female, and you're having boys and girls injected with the opposite one. What could possibly go wrong? So you have all of this. If you start to move away from that and start looking after the car and changing the oil before the engine blows up, changing the filters, you're not going to have any need for most of that degenerative care. So you have all these people. I've seen it. I've gone to the hospital. Let's go into the hospital together, guys. Let's just do a trip. We walk into the hospital foyer. You've got a little tiny bit in the corner because they're just like, keeping them happy now. You've got the Women's Institute, haven't you? Serving tea, coffee and cakes and crap and sugar. Sugar, more addictive than crack cocaine. Lights up so many pieces of your brain. Highly addictive, highly inflammatory. Then you've got all these cakes that are made with oils that push oxygen away from the cell. So now you've got inflammation at the cell. You've got a fire going on. You can't get energy. And they're going to make up the membranes of your cells. Then you've got Dunkin' Donut, Costa Coffee, McDonald's. What the hell is that? Yoga mat material and the bread. And you've got a budget of like £1 for the day to feed the patients. So you have people going into the hospitals with conditions that are there because of the shit that they eat. Arthritis, colitis, Crohn's, diabetes. Diabetic nurses are funded by the companies that make the insulin. Most of them are fat. That's just the nurses. So then you get these nurses and they go, okay, Charlie, what you're going to do is you take this amount of insulin. Don't worry. You just got to eat. If you feel a bit like your blood sugar's going down, you can eat such and such. Not let's adjust the insulin down. Then they say to them, don't forget wholemeal bread. You need to eat wholemeal bread, not white. Because she doesn't know that in 1969, all the wheat was hybridized. And the guy who did it was an American agronomist, and he got the Nobel Peace Prize for it. So instead of your wheat being, taller than me, 6 foot something, it's much shorter with a big higher yield on it. But that's GMO wheat, and it's amylopectin A. It's the highest blood sugar. It's more sugar than bananas and potatoes, which is amylopectin B. Then you've got all your beans and lentils and pulses, amylopectin C. So she's telling the patients to go and eat wholemeal bread, which is the highest sugar because it's hybridized. So then you've got all your cakes, your croissants. They tell them that the stuff that they tell them to eat is bonkers. And what do? They just raise, or we'll have to give you more insulin because your blood sugar's up. Instead of training these patients properly and keeping their blood sugar as an undulating line instead of spikes and troughs, which is what ultimately causes disease, all of the vascular disease they get. So drug companies love side effects. They love them. Why? Because then they get to give loads more drugs for all the side effects. So you've got a diabetic patient. Diabetic patients on a new insulin, they're getting these drops. So what do? You need to eat some bread, eat some toast or whatever. Now they're starting to get vascular problems, ulcers, so they're on drugs for that. And so it goes on. But you have staff that are...
Let me just say there, right, I'm 62 years of age. I've never been in hospital overnight in my life. I cook most of my own food, make my own soups and so on. I don't buy manufactured food if I can avoid it. But the most important thing, obviously, is exercise. It's, living an active life, but also the spiritual basis. Like yourself, Kate, I'm a Christian. And it's very important that you have that inner peace, that calm, that sense of connectedness with the universe, with God. That's very important for your mental and physical health. If your spiritual health is good, I mean, the body's an incredible engine. It can deal with most problems, very effectively. And so I think this is what has now, this is what's really gone wrong with the NHS. We were a Christian nation when it was created, and it was regarded as a Christian institution to care for people in need. Now it's regarded, as you pointed out, almost like an industry, a way to make money. It's a racket now to push drugs, to get institutions to make money, to make individuals wealthy. It's all about the money now, and the patient is just it's just like a sausage being put in. We're just the product at the end. We're not regarded as a whole. You know, the fact that we're living souls, and you talked about psychiatrists earlier. It's like we're not souls anymore. We're just like machines now, which they process, and that is really.
You mentioned four. You've mentioned four really good points there. So let's unpack each of those points. And I always like a bit of proof. Well, the first thing is, let's work backwards. So the NHS has what's called a planned tariff incentivized euthanasia point system. So when someone is placed on end of life care, it triggers a payment of I think it's 487 quid, less than a pig. It's less than a cow. It's what you're worth. So once you're on end of life care, it's the hospital that foots that bill. So if you're dying slowly over a 6-week period, it's going to be quite costly. But if you're to trigger that payment, once that 487 quid, well, if you're then paying someone's dying slowly over 6 weeks, then it's not going to be cost effective, is it? It's going to cost more to you for them to be end of life than what is that one-off payment. So it's in their best interest to make sure that end of life is very quick and swift. And that's what you see happening when you go onto those drugs and how much those drugs is. So that's the first thing. The second thing although it was the first thing you said, but the second thing I'll talk about, you say about exercise, which yes, is very important. However, we are what we eat, and today's food becomes tomorrow's cells, like I talked about with fat. And there's no amount of prescription medication or exercise, which is an offset for a poor diet. And one of the things with exercise, yes, it gets our circulation going. From a physical point of view, it pumps our blood, our lymphatic tissue, but it has a profound effect as well, as you've said, on our mental state. So the telomeres on the end of our DNA, these little things called telomeres, every time a cell divides, a little bit breaks off. And that is a true indication of of aging, the telomeres. What in studies has been shown to affect those telomeres more than our environment, our clean water, our clean food, or diseased food, whatever, what affects those the most is our emotions. So how do we feel? So if one was to look, if you really want to go out there, let's all go out there. But if you look what we are, we're mostly water. We are mostly water. As we get older, we get a bit crispy and dry. Most of us are dehydrated. And if you look in Genesis, first, the earth was without form, and then there was the water, and there was the Lord, Yahweh, and the Holy Spirit that are one, and they moved across the water. Well, what is that movement? It's energy, it's a vibration. So what actually are we talking about here? We're talking about maths. It's math. So we're mostly water, so H2O, hydrogen. So if you look at the hydrogen atom, when you bring in natural light, which is red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet, the violet supercharges the electrons of the hydrogen atom, and the red end of that spectrum goes into the nucleus and supercharges it. And that is what lifts us out of the matrix. When you look at what we have our DNA, we have our enzymes, we have our proteins. What are they? They're spirals. And you're talking about what Nikola Tesla was working on. And what's so fantastic about our bodies, you talk about exercise, and let's talk about light, and let's talk about energy. So inside of every single one of our cells is a little powerhouse called the mitochondria. And we are just a load of cells rocking through this life. So that in that little powerhouse is fluid. When the natural light, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet, which creates an electrical field, because we are energy, we're electrical before we're chemical, before we're physical. When that light hits us, what happens to the water in our body is it begins to separate, and this side becomes H3O2, which is negatively charged, and this side is H2O. Nikola Tesla was working on this. The H3O2 goes towards a hydrophilic border, a water-loving border. If you put an electrode between those two, H2O and H3O2, you could light a light bulb. What is that? That is how your muscles relax and contract. It's potential energy. How do you get that? from the fruits and vegetables you eat, you get their energy. Standing on the earth barefoot, walking outside, getting that natural light. We rely on that electrical field from the light. Trees do it the same. Animals do it the same. So then you now know that you need what? You need light. You need water. You need energy. You need to connect, as above, so below. People think about the dome is a firmament, as in a glass, but it isn't. It's an energy that repels, just like we have in our cells. It's all in there. Everything is in there. And you know that those spirals, double helix strand, your DNA, 10 billion miles of DNA in one genome sequence. Get your head around that. You only need to take out one piece, put a piece in that shouldn't be there, or translocate, and you completely change who you are. 10 billion miles in one piece. So
the point I wanted to make was what is fundamental is our spiritual being, our soul.
And this is it. That spiral is connection.
Empty.
Yeah, well, those DNA
God,
are what
the
lift
fruit
out
of
the
the
water and they connect you. They connect you. It's an antenna to the creator. That's exactly what it is. So you need to be dry and crispy. You need to have no sunshine, no water. And what's going to happen? You're going to get sick, toxic. You're going to get all these diseases because look at children. They're lovely. They're plump. Look. So what do they talk about? If you're saying about a Christian, what is the devil? The prince of air. What travels through air? EMFs. EMFs. It's on the back of your devices. The apple. The bite out of the apple. It's all in scripture. Actually, we can finish the show now. If you really want to know how to get out of this, folks, pick up the Bible as close to the Greek translation as possible. It's all in there. It's all in there.
Oh, thanks, Kate. That was brilliant. Thanks a lot.
Well, let me
It's probably just fried. It's probably just fried. Loads of people's heads.
A few things in. I mean, with me, you know, if anybody had the jab, that's fair enough. That's their choice. I wouldn't mither them. I would, if they asked me, I would tell them what I thought and stuff like that. But like, obviously, I just think that I don't know if you remember, but there was a member of Parliament walking through London to the Houses of Parliament for his daily whatever, and there was an old woman being arrested, put in a van for not wearing a mask. Now, that is what wound me up more than anything else that, you know, to do with the pandemic. And from then on, I knew that the government were going to be horrible on us because they can be and stuff like that. Forget what the jab did, but it's the way they treated us. And that was my big thing against the big C. I never had the jab myself, but I live with my mum and she got ill just before COVID. So there was a lot of pressure on me to make sure my mum had her jabs. Now, we give her 2 jabs. They said she'd had it and she hadn't because she didn't have any symptoms. That thing happened with the test and I'd had enough of them by then, me. So the next time the nurse phoned up from thing, because mum's 87, she's ultra priority, said, you're not jabbing me mum again. I don't want nut to go nowhere near it. And they had, for a week, I had doctors phoning me up and I still just, you know, like, no, I'm not having it. Don't tell me that my mum has to have 3 tests. And so that means that them tests are not accurate. And that's how the woman said to me in the hospital. She never said she might have caught it again. She said, you have to have 3 tests to make sure you haven't got it. So that's telling me that them tests are accurate. And I'd had enough by then, me. And we've just stayed away. She's on minimal.
We know now with hindsight, John, the whole thing was absurd. But anyway, guys,
she's
thanks for that, James.
The day that they give her, and she's still going. She's still here. So God bless me, Mammy.
I think it's really important here because what's happening is, as Paul's just said, none of this is real, folks. When your emotions, whatever you think you keep focusing on, you're going to get. It's not a tyrannical government that overthrow the people. It's the people allowing it. It's people allowing it. And this whole thing where they don't care as long as they get what they get. People don't care about their elderly anymore. They see them as a hindrance. There's a real war on the elderly because everyone is selfish. Nobody serves anybody anymore. It's all about me, myself, and I. But I think we have to be very careful. I like the fact that you use the word mithering, because I'm actually a North Nottingham gal. I was brought up in Bulwell in Nottingham. Dogs go around in packs there. Once they said that Greg the Baker's was going to shut, and everybody thought the kids would starve. It was a standard diet. A diet coconut and a sausage roll was the standard diet for the kids, I think, in the 90s. But anyway, mining town. I was brought up in a mining town. I went to school in Hucknall. We then moved. So that was my humble beginnings, the daughter of a postman. My parents were married with 3 children by the time they were 20. And we lived in a council house, and then they saved and later bought a house. But so for all those people out there that think I come from something, I don't know, I read somewhere I came from some rich, I was raised on Angel Delight, tripe and onions, because we were always skint, Fray Bentos pies, brains, faggots, meatballs. I'm sure you'll remember that, and hideous school dinners. Yeah. So, and gooseberries and going goose-gogging with my granddad.
Can I just ask you where your name comes? Shemirani.
My ex-husband's name. And
right.
I see the point in changing my name and paying for a new passport, a new driver's license, and everything else. I don't really care. I don't care at all. So, but the point is, we talk about mithering. I love the other word as well, mardy. You don't hear that because I lived in the posh south. But I think what's happened is what we've seen is we've seen another dichotomy where we've seen all these doctors, and I know a lot of these doctors. I spoke at the Red Pill Expo. I know them personally. But we see a lot of these doctors now, and they've become celebrities. And now we're seeing the second wave of heroes. Nobody's a hero. Nobody's a hero. You come in with nothing. You go out with nothing. Ultimately, you're judged on what you did when you're here. Doesn't matter. All of these heroes, that's the ego speaking. It's just the ego. So we're seeing all these doctors, they're heroes, and they're sort of selling their wares. And I think it's unfair for all of us. And you don't hear me saying it. I said in the beginning, and you can hear it, it's all on record. And I was the first one. I said they're going to have a vaccination for this. You're going to need it to travel. I said that in February 2020. I put it on my Twitter. It's on my GETTR as a pinned tweet. I don't post on there very often, but it's on there, that radio show that I did. Now, then I went on and I said in Trafalgar Square, they are going to come for the kids. But I think it's very unfair when people say, they're all going to, I've heard people say it, everyone's going to be dead in 2 years. They'll all be dead. Well, first of all, I can tell you right now, a lot of those vaccines weren't stored properly. And I know that because the nurses were too idle to store them. They told me they couldn't be asked going back to the fridges and putting them in. So they left them out. So they would have perished. Then the doctors were told there was 2.5 vaccines in each vial, and they were getting so much money per vaccine. So they were telling the nurses to get 4 shots out of 1 vial. You couldn't make this up, which was great because that means that they didn't get the full amount. So that happened as well. But who are we? This is new technology. This is new technology, and yes, it's pretty horrific what is being seen. What is coming out with people that's dying. But I refuse to believe that the Lord created us so perfect in his image that the dark forces are able to sully what the Lord has created. It's impossible. There's no such thing as junk DNA when you're told junk DNA. Every piece of DNA that you have, 10 billion miles of DNA in one genome sequence. That's how much is massive. None of that is junk. If you believe that with time that this body cannot overcome, then you have a spirit of fear in you, and the Lord did not give us the spirit of fear at all. So I think it's very unkind to keep saying to people they're going to be dead in 2 years, because what does that do? There is absolutely loads of studies out there, and I've just explained to you about the telomeres on the end of the DNA. There are loads of studies showing that the emotions of resentment, fear, jealousy, anger, resonate at 0.2 to 2.2 hertz. The feelings, the emotions, because we are energy, that's all we are. The feeling of love, joy, acceptance, 180 to 220. What happens when you've gone through a period of stress, a period of bereavement? You get sick, you start getting cold sores, you get flu, you feel unwell because your body has been put under stress. So if we keep saying to everybody, oh, look what the government's doing now, look what they're doing now, everyone's going to die, those people are going to start believing it. And this is exactly what happens when the doctor says to you, the oncologist says to you, you've got 6 months to live. What do the majority of those patients do? They die bang on the 6 months. Bang on the 6 months. So I think we have to stop saying, I'm going to answer that in a minute, what's good for eczema. We have to stop saying they're going to be dead, because my sons have had it. Now, I might not like what my sons have done in life, but it doesn't matter. They've had those shots, and I don't want something to happen to them. I don't want to be the one that picks up the phone. Sorry, we've got some bad news for you. So I think 1 in 2 people die of cancer. Even before COVID, 1 in 2 people will be diagnosed in their lifetime. Loads of people get in the car every day thinking about what they're going to be having for their tea, and they're involved in a road traffic accident, they die. So, but lots of people don't. Lots of people grow old, but not everybody grows old. It's not an absolutely dead cert. People die as babies, people die as toddlers, people die, hideous accidents. We see it. But I think we don't have that crystal ball, nor do we have the authority. Only the Lord knows the hour and the day of our death. But we do not have the right to keep saying to people, you're going to die. You're going to die.
We've gone past our hour, so I'll wrap up. But just answer, what is good for severe eczema?
Well, eczema, your skin is the biggest organ of your body, and it's telling you one of 2 things. It's either contact dermatitis, if you're putting something on your skin. So you need to attack this by both ways. Stop putting anything on your skin which is crap. So you can get rid of every single thing that you've got in your closet. Buy yourself some Dr. Bronner's soap, pure soap. That's all you need, and coconut oil. Then you need to look at, what are you putting in your body? What are you putting down your throat? What are you eating? Nearly all disease begins in the gut. So you've got a damaged gut. That's the first thing. So if you're eating hybridized wheat, it's got burrs on it. It's going to make all GMO food or all your bad oils. Anything that's corn or soy that's not organic is going to be GMO. It's going to make holes in your gut. You're going to get unprocessed food stuff going into your bloodstream, setting up inflammation. So you need to heal the gut. How would you do that? It's atopic. Well, you know what? How do they know it's atopic? You've got to attack this from both ways. What you put on your skin. So you're thinking, oh, I just want some cream that's going to go on my skin and sort it out. It's the biggest organ of your body. It sheds from the inside out. You've got your epidermis, which has got 7 layers to it, then your dermis, then your subcutaneous level. That epidermis, the top layer, the stratum corneum, is dead, and it sheds, and new skin comes up and it keeps shedding. So where's your skin made? On the inside. So how are you going to get good skin? From the inside. The first thing I would say to you is, every single day you should be drinking at least 1.5 liters. In between every single tea, coffee, whatever else you drink, have a glass of water. Clean water, not the crap out your tap. Get some Highland Spring, and you drink lots of water. That's the first thing. What's it going to do? It's going to flush out toxins for a start. It's going to keep you hydrated and plump. But you need to start eating loads of fresh fruit and organic vegetables and smoothies, juices, and start flooding. Now, the first thing you're going to say is, oh, it's making me feel really ill and my joints hurting and my tongue's gone white. I was much better when I didn't do it. No, it's forcing your body to offload some garbage from inside the cells. So you've got to think about what you put on your body, what you put in your body.
Right, thank you very much. Thank you to everyone in the chat. Kate, sorry, bloody hell, I couldn't hardly keep up with you there. But thank you for coming on the show, love. Thank you very much.
Hey, you're very welcome. And I'll tell you something for nothing.
You're obviously very knowledgeable and well read. Wow. And I will be looking at
a struck-off nurse. They can shove that registration up their arseholes. I wouldn't want to be on that. I wear it as a badge of honour. Why would I want to be?
I will be looking at some of
Sounded
your
like
stuff.
a professor of medicine.
I do have doctors come to me as well for help. So, but you know what? Thank you so much for having me on. I try and never say no to any platform. I don't care how big or how small it is. You can find me on Sons of Liberty in America for the last 4 years as the health nurse expert on a Saturday at 1 p.m. UK time. I do Unity News Network on a Wednesday night, 8 p.m. It's very small, but I also do TNT Radio Live, Medical Crimes in Tyrannical Times. At the moment, it's on a Sunday, 10 a.m. till 11, but it's soon going to be longer and it's going to be later. It's going to be starting, I think, a couple of hours later. But you could just go onto the TNT app. My whole thing, and you can contact me, naturalnurse@mail.com. I do private nutrition consults. But the whole thing here, my website, it is all built. It's only $5.99 to join. That's all it is. Because it's not about me being in charge of anybody else. It's about teaching you to become ambassadors for health in your own communities, your own families, so you know what I know, so that you never, hopefully, have to go near a hospital and you become a pupil. That's all you are. You're a student, a pupil. So you will be a minister of healing among your own families.
I hope we get our taxes back if we don't have to go to hospitals.
Tax, isn't that just a big cost?
Some of Kate's links are in the description to the video. Twitter, she's also on Facebook, and I've just put the email, Kate's email.
Mail.com. My website is just kateshemirani.com, but it's not live just yet because there's just a couple of things I keep getting turned down for bank accounts. I wonder why. So, yeah, Nigel Farage, eat your heart out.
We also just want to get in our party what a full and thorough public investigation in what happened during the COVID-19 pandemic. And, you know, we're just not happy with everything to do with it, whether it be the vaccine itself or the way we've been treated. And
you know what, John?
Big
We could change the name of our party from the National Housing Party to the National Health Party.
And Big John's been a big critic of the lockdowns and the way we was treated during it.
I never did lockdown. I don't know what you are talking about. I never ever did it.
My mum went ill the week before it started. Honestly, it could have been ended up me not being able to see my mum, and I would have to look through a window, and I weren't having that. So I spent 1 year and 3 months on my mum's front room floor looking after her. So that's what I did, and there was no way it was.
You see, you're a good son, and unfortunately, we're raising a generation of selfish toads.
Oh yeah, aren't we just? Oh, that's another discussion. But thank you very much, everyone. Thank you to the chat and everything, and a big thank you and a God bless to Kate there. And I'm sure we'll have you on the show again, or one of us will be on your show or something. But
yeah, follow me on Twitter because that's where if you guys found me on Twitter, you'll see that I actually post everything. From bits of scripture, good morning messages, what's in the press, and I post the actual documents and the links to what we find. I have a really good researcher who works with me as well, my surrogate husband.
How many followers have you got, Kate, on Twitter?
Oh, there's only 65 because I was banned off everywhere for 3 years. Really? So I'd only just joined Twitter and I had 20,000 on it. I got banned in 2000.
Paul.
Right, so I got banned in 2020 and I got my Twitter account back just a year ago.
That needs to grow.
So I only got a year ago. So last year, it's got another 40-odd thousand in a year. So I don't really care. You know what? So one of my posts has got 20 million views on it. So it was just a woman breastfeeding, and I wrote a biological woman feeding her baby. And it was great because it irritated everyone. The trannies, the gays were good actually. It irritated everybody. It was great, and everybody liked it just because I wrote a biological woman feeding her baby with this, and she was gorgeous with these big voluptuous breasts. 20 million views.
X is the platform now, isn't it? X is the free speech platform.
Well, none of them are free speech, are they? It's all the whole.
But it's the best.
Yeah, you know what? It's kind of. I'm not stuck really in the. I did all the COVID, whatever you call it, 4 years ago. I'm more into the greenhouse that I've got put up now and all the pallet collars, and I'm wanting to grow stuff and get chickens and bees because we shouldn't be living this way. We shouldn't be where it's all our own fault. It can't continue. It can't continue for anybody. And we're supposed to live till we're 120. Go through all the old graveyards. I've even done it in Iceland. You'll find graves that are people are 110. 108. I was looking in Buxted Park graveyard, and then you start to see the introduction of vaccines, and you start to get to the 60s, and you start to see people dying. Now they're in their 40s in the graveyards. So you see people believing that they should only be living till they're 70 and 75 is preposterous. The Hunsas in the Himalayas live till they're like 120, give or take a year. No cancer in their tribe at all.
80 will do me. But
I'm
going
to 120.
Thank you very much. Thank you to the chat, everyone. Obviously, follow the National Housing Party. Katie's links to Twitter, Facebook, and are all in there. And I do mention that she's on UNN, and we'll be watching her more anyway. When we get something pretty relevant, we'll talk about it and maybe get Kate on again. But thank you, Kate. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me on.
And Pat's missed it, but thank you.